Damn straight I'm seeing dollar signs if somebody like John Tenta walks through the door. Who's the biggest, baddest son of a bitch on the planet? I'd have him squash all those little bastards.
With a superhero, you need a villain that's just as powerful to counter. You needed somebody like my dad.
You are gonna feel the earthquake!
You know it was over because he'd go like this across his throat, jump a couple times around your head.
The tremors are beginning.
Run to the set of ropes and then just jump on your chest.
Kaboom!
The earthquake splash, man.
Larger-than-life John Tenta had a meteoric rise in the WWF's Earthquake before being paired with another big man, Typhoon, in the iconic tag team, The Natural Disasters.
It's bad weather for everybody in the WWF.
Natural disasters, earthquake and typhoon. 1,000 pounds of fun.
There was no picking them guys up, put it that way. You go to lift them and, blow your back out type situations.
Intimidating in the ring, behind the scenes, John Tenta was a very different man.
They were gentlemen, respected by everybody. Everybody could count on John Tenta to do the job and do it right. No doubt about that.
My dad was a good guy, regardless if he was a heel or not.
He cared deeply about his family, and he also cared a lot about other people.
It's not very dark side of the wrestling, huh?
But a change in fortune for both men turned these once respected superstars into parodies of themselves.
He was so many gimmicks. It was probably hard for him to take.
I felt like that was the low of the low for him.
Vince McMahon can put you on the stars or he can put you in hell. Just that simple.
You don't walk out on Vince McMahon. If you do, you're gonna pay for it.
I don't think John gave a damn. The main important thing, to make the money and take care of his family.
And for John Tenta and his family, a cruel ending that no one saw coming.
John doesn't want to go to the doctor. He waited too long.
My dad's a fighter. He's gonna fight through this. There's no way this will take him down.
I just prayed, God, please heal him. Please let us have more time with our dad.
Dino Bravo and the Ultimate Warrior were having a push-up contest in the middle of the ring, and the gimmick was to find the biggest guy in the stands and to call him down.
The whole audience already realized there's this giant man in the audience that would be perfect to be in this competition.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
When my dad made his debut in the WWE, he was planted in the audience.
Take a look at the size of this man.
Jimmy Hart called him down. John from West Virginia.
And he's wearing this bright blue shirt, jeans and white shoes, looking like a dad.
And so he's sitting on the Ultimate Warrior's back. Then he just smashes him.
Wait a minute! Whoa! Bravo!
We see the first iteration of the Earthquake Splash and establishing himself as a pretty major heel.
Mount of a man down across the chest! Hey, this guy learned how to wrestle pretty quick! Yeah, no kidding! I smell a rat!
That's how he's introduced into the wrestling world. My name's Jeff Tenta, and Earthquake's my father. Everybody knew me as Lil Quake, everybody knew my dad. I was just in the backstage a lot of times when he was wrestling. I can honestly say that he was definitely respected. My dad told you to keep an eye on my kid. They were gonna do it.
It was kind of surreal being backstage. I've watched these wrestlers and their own personas and their gimmicks just kind of doing their thing, just talking to each other. I'm Joanna, and I'm the daughter of Earthquake John Tenta.
I did want to be a wrestler. I still love wrestling today, and growing up, I thought there was nobody cooler than my dad. My name is John Tenta, the youngest child of John, Earthquake, and Josephine Tenta. My dad was good at making the audience buy into this villain. I think he was incredible in the ring.
When John Tenta debuts in WWF in 1989, he's already had a storied career that has taken him halfway around the world from his hometown of Surrey, British Columbia.
My dad knew that he wanted to become a wrestler from a very young age. My grandfather was also a huge wrestling fan, and so they only got a few channels, but they would always tune in to watch wrestling.
From that moment on, he was hooked. He knew that that was what he wanted to do.
My grandmother and grandfather were not wealthy people, they couldn't afford to buy him a weight set or get him into extracurricular sports and things like that. So he found other ways to exercise, going to the parks, lifting park benches, or doing whatever he could to just get stronger. They believed in him from the beginning. He was a Canadian world champion in wrestling, and he was being prospected by 12 major universities in the US. And we know that he ended up going to LSU and wrestling there. But when they dropped their wrestling program, he found wrestling in other ways.
The oldest Japanese sport is sumo, a form of wrestling which dates back to hand-to-hand combat techniques of nearly 20 centuries ago.
John Tenta was 22 years old. One of the sumo wrestling stable came to college wrestling meet and recruited him when he was in Louisiana State University. He quit college and came to Japan to live and start as a sumo wrestler. Hello, my name is Fumi Saito. I'm a journalist, I'm an author, I'm a wrestling historian. Sumo is Japanese national sport. They still wear kimonos, they have samurai hairdos, and sumo wrestler is like more like a sumo society.
Sumo is different. The way they train, the discipline, you have to fight for it. My name is Haku. I've been with wrestling for 40 years. Pro wrestling, you climb over the top rope and jump. Sumo is more on the ground and more physical. John was probably the tallest one of that time, and he was big too. I believe they were looking at him to be a grand champion.
He went into 3 consecutive tournaments and won all 3 tournaments. He was basically undefeated for 8 months period until he decided to walk out.
I like sumo, I like the sport, but I just can't live the lifestyle. There's a lot of demands and a lot of pressure put on you. I had to do anything that my senior wrestlers asked me.
And when I interviewed him the following year, he felt that he always wanted to be a professional wrestler. That was his goal. He was signed with All Japan Pro Wrestling in July of 1986. He basically learned from Japanese side and American side together. He enjoyed professional wrestling a lot more than he enjoyed sumo wrestling, that's for sure. He learned the customs and spoke Japanese too. He was treated more like a local now.
My love, there's only John in my life. It's only John forever. My name is Josephine, and I'm married with John Earthquake Tenta. I'm from the Philippines. Luckily, I got my visa and go to Japan for singing entertainer. He went into the place that I was working, and my mama's son introduced him to me. It's love at first sight for him and for me. My mama's son told me he's a wrestler, but I don't know nothing about wrestling. So to me, so what? He's really famous. John was 6'7".
And how tall are you?
4'11". It didn't bother me at all.
Don't get it twisted, man. My mom may be barely 5 foot, but she's the alpha in the house. I promise you that.
They really are a love story for the ages. Everything had to be in the right place and set in motion at the right time for them to even find each other in such a big world.
I know right away that he's a good man and a big heart.
The following year, WWF at the time was already interested in John Tenta as Hulk Hogan's opponent. And John Tenta asked the company, would it be okay to leave and join WWE? The Great Kabuki, I believe, was the one who told him, go ahead and do it. That's your chance.
Before accepting the offer from the WWF, John Tenta makes a commitment, not just to Josephine, but to her son Jeff as well.
We were a package deal, me and my mom. And the first time I saw him, he was sitting there in one of our chairs in front of a window, and just his whole body would just cover that whole window. That's the lasting image I have the first time I meet my father. Only father I know, so he is my dad. When they got married shortly after, we both flew from Philippines to Canada. Obviously, I was a little nervous, a little scared. Different country, a whole new world.
As John and his family settle in British Columbia, his WWF career ignites with an in-ring feud against the world champion, Hulk Hogan.
World Wrestling Federation Heavyweight Champion, and he has never looked better.
There's nothing going on in the wrestling business could even be any bigger than the Hulkamania. When you come in there and you're working right off on top, that means you're somebody and you're good. Hey, this is Earl Hebner, and I've been a referee for over 40 years. John was a special friend of mine, always. We were all a team. John knew how to handle the matches. He knew how to make them exciting.
He may have been a rookie, but he had credentials. He earned it. Hi, I'm Jake the Snake Roberts, WWE superstar and master of the DDT.
DDT, Stone Mountain, Georgia.
John took it like he'd been doing it for years. I couldn't believe when I found out how long he'd been wrestling. I was amazed.
Hogan tries to go for the bonus.
It's a spot that everybody wants. You're wrestling the champ, you're gonna be paid like a champ.
I think my dad was a great foe for Hulk Hogan because he was one of the only guys that was actually bigger than him. He was really great at generating heat. So you needed somebody that you could really hate.
The last time I came face to face with Hulk Hogan, they carried him out on a stretcher. And all the little Hulkamaniacs cried their little eyes out because they knew Hulkamania was dead.
Now forget about it.
You wrestle Hogan, you made it. You're that guy, you're it. His career was gonna just take off and keep taking off, and it was exciting.
The most important match for John Tenta as a professional wrestler happened back in Japan, 1991. The Tokyo Dome event was Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, Bret Hart, all these superstars. But it was another attraction, former sumo wrestler John Tenta against former grand champion of sumo wrestling, Koji Kitao, rookie professional wrestler. Kitao was not a popular professional wrestler. He thought he was going to be just as big a star. He wasn't. For Kitao, John Tenta was somebody who tried sumo wrestling for 1 year and didn't even make it. And this time, actually, John Tenta was bigger and better than Kitao.
Kitao think that, he was Bruce Lee or something. He didn't care about the rules, the respect and everything.
一方の北尾浩二、2メートル、身長150、体重18キロ。
First match, an earthquake drop. John Tenta pinned Koji Kitao, a former Yokozuna Grand Champion sumo wrestler. Oh, Kitao wasn't happy. I believe second night at Kobe, John was gonna go over too, again. That night, Kitao worked against the booking plan.
おっと北尾怒った。北尾が放送席のテーブルを投げつけた。
We were standing there because we knew already that he was, he might pull something, and he did.
どっちが先に仕掛ける？北尾か？テンタか？
Kitao went like this and was gonna poke his eye. Come on, we gotta have a fight. We gotta fight.
And I know when he went for that eye poke, my dad delivered a real kick, like an MMA match. After Kitao disqualified himself from the match to end it and saw it wasn't going anywhere, grabbed a mic, told everyone that wrestling was fake, that it was all a lie, it was all a scam.
John Tenta, you are fake, and the whole thing is fake, and he walked out on the match.
We were all there in the dressing room, and John busted in there. He said, "Where's that son of a bitch? I'm gonna kick his ass."
It was Kitao who got booed out of the building. That was the last time Kitao worked for SWS company. He was fired the next day.
John is very kind. John is very quiet. Those are the guys that you have to watch out for.
After former sumo grand champion turned wrestler Koji Kitao goes rogue during a match in Japan, he's fired for his actions. But for John Tenta, the incident cements his reputation as a true professional.
When John Tenta went back to the States, entire backstage of WWF asked him, "I heard you had shoot match in Japan and you took care of yourself. Great." Everybody had so much respect for John Tenta and Earthquake from that day forward.
Oh, look at this. Earthquake doing his thing.
He loved that gimmick. It made him feel big. It made him feel like he was a force to be reckoned with. And my dad would always brag about, look, I'm the most hated bad guy, you know, because he knew he did his job.
Roberts, last week you thought you were real smart trying to put that snake on me. I'm telling you here and now, keep Damien away from me. I can't stand snakes, but most of all, I can't stand you. I hate your guts. Damien was my pet snake that I loved and trusted, and I always had the snake with me, you know, and then at the end of the match, I'd get the snake out and drape it across the fallen opponents. It was my gimmick.
Jake the Snake Roberts with Damien in the bag.
The idea was for him to kill it. They wanted me to get knocked out of the ring and then Tenta do the damage to the snake where he jumps on the snake while I'm down and out. So I would never see it. And I told him, hell no, that's not the way to do that. The way to do that is to tie me in the ropes and make me watch it.
Jake always puts Damien underneath the ring, and at that time, there was another bag underneath the ring, so he'd grab the bag, put it out center of the ring.
He's got Damien in the ring, but from behind again.
Quick ran into the ropes and gave him this big boom squash.
Watch this, folks. Please don't watch it. No, he's gonna go. Come on, he's got. Oh,
The amazing Oscar performance of Jake, you know, crying and bawling his eyes out while he watched my dad sit on Damien.
I went to the bag and opened up the bag and seen Damien all crushed, which wasn't Damien, it was a pair of women's pantyhose full of hamburger meat.
Tragedy here has befallen Jake the Snake Roberts.
We got some letters over it, you know, because it traumatized so many kids. You know, it's wrestling, for God's sake, come on.
And not only that, the aftermath after squashing Damien, there's a segment where he serves Vince McMahon and Bobby the Brain some burgers that he'd cooked up, and he called them Quake burgers, and that the meat rhymed with Quake.
You think this is funny?
I gotta eat.
After my dad feuded with Hulk Hogan and with Jake the Snake, you know, the storylines were maybe running a little bit thin. My dad approached Typhoon, or Tugboat, Fred at the time, to essentially join up.
Hi, this is Fred Ottman, Tugboat, Typhoon, the Shockmaster, the B-A-double-D Big Steel Man, and also one half of the Natural Disasters.
What you got?
And I was Superstar Big Bubba too. I have a memorable dance contest with Rocky Johnson, and I got the opportunity to bust a giant boombox over his noggin.
Fred, you know, he didn't know his own strength. He was laying there in a puddle of blood. I go, what? You killed him. That was Fred, or Big Bubba, wrapped up into a ball. I'm Jerry Sags, one half the infamous tag team, the Nasty Boys. That's the time we first met Big Bubba, Fred. He'd become many other gimmicks after that.
The old Tugboat is just like the Battleship Missouri, brother. He's loaded. He's ready for battle, brother.
Full steam ahead. Tugger's coming to town.
No. Indeed. Oh, look at that shot right there. Talk about power.
The office call from WWF, and they go, we'd like to put you and Earthquake together. Jimmy Hart will be your manager. You will be Typhoon, and he will be Earthquake, the Natural Disasters.
I thought it was a great deal for Fred, the transition, because those two guys together were monsters.
852 pounds combined weight. Gotta be a record.
We wrestled John and Fred a lot, but you had to change your whole game plan up because you weren't throwing these guys in the rope and power bombing them, or you go to give them a double tackle, but me and Oz would both get knocked on our ass. You know, you let Fred do his strongman stuff and Quake could work with anybody. They were just another notch, one of the greatest teams we wrestled.
You got the Earthquake and you got Typhoon. That kind of weather, you shouldn't be wrestling.
I can't hear you. This is deafening.
Chasing the dream, the champ deal is awesome, and having it is awesome. But you may be in Connecticut today or Madison Square Garden and then have to fly out to LA.
The schedule of the WWE was really brutal. 7 days a week, twice on Saturday, twice on Sunday.
You're like an absentee father, sort of. Your wife is the stronghold of the household, and she's taking care of the family while you're gone.
He'd be gone a month at a time, and he'd be home for a couple days. Clearly, it was tough on my mom. New environment, new country. She expected him to be home a little bit more.
John was having a hard time too, because I'm new to the place, so he's worried about me. Especially when I have Jeffrey and Joanna at that time.
I didn't know who he was because I saw him very seldomly. It was this massive giant walking through the door, and the person who's been with me the most is this petite, tiny Filipino woman. And I'm sure that broke his heart, which makes me sad to think about.
The pressure there to come home is monstrous size, man. How much is too much? The answer is, it was all too much. But that didn't matter to Vince McMahon.
And there he is. There's my buddy, the Quake. And I can't leave him by himself, you know what I'm saying? So the disasters have to be together, spending some time. And we're equal opportunity smashers, okay? Because there's Money Incorporated having a bad day.
In 1992, the Natural Disasters dominate the WWF tag team scene, setting themselves apart backstage with their unique approach to life on the road.
There were guys that their goal was about a strip club or women. Where's the party? John was neither of those. And Fred was neither of those.
I wasn't ever really a big drinker. I didn't do drugs and that stuff. You know, I'd be with John, we'd go in the room and bullshit and talk about home life and stupid shit that we'd seen on the road. Sometimes it's better just to sit back and see it unfurl.
They were straight up guys, you know what I mean? But the two son of a bitches could put some food away, you know what I mean? You know, the plate couldn't hold enough. I'm like, Fred, you go back for more. It looked like Mount St. Helens or something. You know, but he would go back for 4 more plates.
He's one of the greatest guys I've met in this business. He's very humble, always ready to give 100%. Plus, it wasn't bad having a guy his size covering my back either.
They really became close friends, that Natural Disaster run. And it was a good run.
At the beginning of 1993, the reign of the Natural Disasters comes to an end as John Tenta returns to Japan.
That's probably been the problem with my career, is that I'm impatient, and I just didn't see a whole lot going on. They had different tag teams they wanted to push, and we kind of got pushed to the back, and I just felt we were too big to be pushed to the back, so I kind of took a hiatus and went back to Japan for a while.
Fred Ottman continues to wrestle for the WWF until later that year when an unthinkable tragedy brings Fred home to Florida.
I was opening 2 bars in Key West. My brother-in-law, Randy, was supposed to run the business when I was on the road, and my brother-in-law was out on the phone by that building, and there was some young kids that were there, and they start messing with a good friend of his. And Randy drops the phone and goes over to try to de-escalate the situation. Well, the oldest guy, he had a pistol and shot the gun, and he hit my brother-in-law, and he dropped dead on the spot. And so with everything I had going on, there was no one to take over the business. And it took me off the road, and not what I had planned, but, you know, my family.
While Fred struggles to help his family, John's work schedule in Japan takes him further away from his own.
My dad at the time, the travel was starting to wear on him.
My mom and dad got into a pretty big fight just because he wasn't home enough. It was a pretty big blowout, you know. My mom was just tired of not, you know, seeing him as often as she would have liked to. I remember that day like it was yesterday, man.
In August of 1993, Fred Ottman makes his return to the ring for the WWF's rival, WCW, but soon finds himself at the center of one of the most embarrassing moments in wrestling history, while the cameras are live.
The Shockmaster was the gimmick. This was live TV.
Tonight's special guests are Sting, the British Bulldog Davey Boy Smith, and their mystery guest.
It was Sting and Davey Boy. They're tagged up, and it was the Harlem Heat on the other side. And Fred was supposed to attack Harlem Heat or something.
Hey, they're going to tell us before you get carried away who their special tag team partner is, brother. You better cool down.
The whole idea was that I was the mystery partner. Had me bust through the wall with this gimmick on. The true Shockmaster was almost like a comic book.
Like a Darth Vader head or something, right?
Here, try this on. This is what you're gonna wear when you go through here. It's got two little pinholes. Like little pinholes, like this, at most. And then glitter is coming in. They built a wall that was 2x4 studs, 12, 14-inch on center, 5/8 sheetrock, like a wall in your house. Now, they didn't gimmick the wall, though. They didn't score it or anything like that to make it easier. The guy gave me the cue. He says, Fred, you're going to have to hit that wall hard, man.
Do you remember the Shockmaster?
Shockmaster.
I can show it to you. Do you want to see what I'm talking about?
Our partner is going to shock the world because he is none other than the Shockmaster!
What the
I go, what in the hell was that? Was that Fred?
The Shockmaster! All right! The Shockmaster!
I told you. Oh, God. Look at this mother. Fell down. It looked like he hit that thing and come down.
What happened was I hit it so hard, like this when I went through the wall. It put me straight over like a teeter-totter at a kid's playground.
He was looking for the gimmick.
They call me the Shockmaster.
What a lot of people don't know is that wasn't Fred's voice talking. It was Ole Anderson with his growly voice was on a microphone.
Come after me, Sid. I'm ready.
Is this the end of it? We might as well. We can't top this one here. Fred, I still love you. I never seen that shit before.
He was going to crush people or shock them, whatever he was going to do, but he fell. And that was the end of that.
The Shockmaster.
It was horrendous, but you know what? You can turn a negative into a positive. It's been very, very good to me. That's the classic Shockmaster.
They made an internet sensation out of Fred falling through the wall. So if there'd be like a plane crash and Fred ran in and saved like all the school kids out of the plane and before it blew up, he'd still be remembered as Shockmaster, I think. It's funny as shit.
Oh my goodness.
Earthquake! Victorious, and by the way...
A former star for Vince McMahon's WWF, John Tenta has grown disillusioned with the company and the toll its aggressive schedule took on his family.
Then I wasn't so pleased at the time with the financial situation, so I called WCW.
I think that he was ready to find a solution that would allow him to be with his family more. And I think at that time, WCW kind of threw him the life raft.
They gave him such big contracts and less working days on the road.
We moved from Canada to Florida so that my dad could have more time at home. It was so easy to be around him, to be around family, and just to enjoy each other, whether it was something like going to Disney or it was a Thursday night and I popped in a laser disc so we could sing karaoke.
He is a karaoke king, man. House of the Rising Sun was one of his favorite songs they sing.
We sing together, and we like the duet of Endless Love.
When my dad was home, he showed up to any event, any show, any game, anything that we had going on.
That was a nice base hit there.
He was all about making memories and doing things with the family.
That's awesome.
Thank you, sweetie.
But as John's family life is solidified, his career in the ring is coming apart.
Introducing first, Avalanche.
The WCW couldn't use the Earthquake name, so he came in as Avalanche.
Vince McMahon owned the name Earthquake. To go out there and change your name and everything, it confuses the fans.
The Avalanche was too close to Earthquake. And so that'd be kind of infringing on that trademark. So unfortunately, that gimmick didn't last very long.
After Avalanche, we all got graced with Shark, which he absolutely hated.
Did they put a fin on him? I thought to myself, that's stupid.
He did it just because, you know, it's supporting the family. Once again, it's a job. You know, he's going to do what he needs to do to make it work and be all in on it.
You know, at that time I was still about 430 pounds. There's a few people shouting beast whale and stuff like that. And
I just think maybe they just never could get the right character that they wanted out of him.
After a year of portraying the Shark in WCW, John finally gets the opportunity to define himself in the ring.
I'm not the Shark. I'm not a fish. I'm not an avalanche. I'm a man. John Tenta.
But very much so felt like it was his mic drop moment with all of these gimmicks.
But the bottom line is he was never given the storylines that he had in the WWE. He was never put in the position to make money in WCW. He was just used.
But in 1998, during what is supposed to be his triumphant return to the WWF, John Tenta is forced into his oddest gimmick yet.
The Golga character was a member of the Oddities, where you had Luna Vachon, Kurgan, and Giant Silva.
He had this huge Hartman doll that he brought out to the ring with him. He was under a mask.
Putting John under a mask was just humiliation. You know, they didn't want him to get the kudos that he would have had if they just ran him out there as Earthquake. They wanted to do something that was just grotesque.
Even when he was in the Shark or the Avalanche, he was an Earthquake. Even when he was Golga, he was Earthquake. Everybody wanted Earthquake back. All these other gimmicks were just trying to get back to, you know, his glory days.
When Golga ran its course, you couldn't go back to the WCW. Where else did you go? Which is likely why that sparked his wrestling school that he opened up in Sanford.
It didn't work out. It's like always money coming out, but nothing's really coming in. We had a bankruptcy. Everything changed. He has the school for maybe I will say a year or under a year. And then he started doing the retail.
He got a job at the mall. He worked in the big and tall section. You know, he'd have fans recognize him.
Dude was working in the men's department, you know, sweating his ass off.
It is incredibly hard to go from being a superstar to working retail somewhere.
John was going to make a living for his family, regardless of what it was. If he had to shovel shit, he'd do it, provide for his family.
After my dad left retail, he started truck driving. He saw it as an opportunity to make a little bit more money. You know, it wasn't a glamorous job. He would be, you know, peeing in gallon jugs because you just don't have time to stop at a truck stop. And he started to notice that there were blood clots in his urine, and he was on the road, and so he wasn't able to get to a doctor very quickly, and he kind of kept it a secret from my mom for a little while. He kind of got away with letting this tumor in his bladder grow for longer than it should have. When he went to the doctor, they gave him a very short prognosis and said that there wasn't anything that they were going to be able to do. Said it was already advanced too far.
It's already too late because the size of the tumor is like a baseball size.
After being diagnosed with advanced bladder cancer, John Tenta and his wife must break the news to their children.
My parents sat me and my siblings down, and They said that my dad had cancer and that they were going to Houston for a second opinion. And there were a lot of tears and a lot of worry and fear.
Well, my sister works in healthcare, and she told me that bladder cancer is one of the most curable cancers. And so for that to take him down because he was away from home, or he kept it a secret, it's a bummer to hear.
It definitely sucked. He felt like if he was still wrestling, they might have caught it earlier, so he might have had a fighting chance.
I walked in on him sitting at the edge of the bed watching some old tapes. There were VHS tapes all over the floor, and I heard him laughing. And he was watching the segment on primetime. He was quoting himself in the segment. He was loving it. He was making himself laugh with the jokes that he was telling. I do think that my dad was kind of forged to be tough, and it's funny, you think like, oh, you just gotta fight as hard as you can. But it's so much more than that, right? It's not like he could do a body slam to the tumors in his bodies.
As one of the wrestling world's most imposing figures takes on the battle of his life, few in the business even know of his struggle.
John, I wish that you told me that you needed help. Especially, it wasn't just about you, but it was also for your family. But too late to find out that you kept it to yourself.
In the summer of 2005, my dad looked actually great that summer. He looked a lot like himself.
He was going through chemo and all that stuff, and they still had high hopes that they were going to beat it. And I was getting married that June 2005.
Before the wedding, he called me on the phone. He says, "Fred, the cancer is back."
We're trying to see if it can be fixed, So we didn't tell the kids.
At the wedding, my brother and his wife had the karaoke machine set up, and one of my mom's songs to my dad is "You Needed Me." And so she was starting to sing that song, and kind of halfway through, she just started breaking down and crying.
My dad came to my mom, and they had that crying session, just hugging each other and crying.
Love him so much. When you love someone, nothing is hard as long that you're with that person that you love.
At that point, they pretty much figured it was, game over for my dad.
Just before his eldest son Jeff's wedding, John Tenta learns that the cancer has spread throughout his body.
Looking back, it's not shocking that he wasn't quick to tell us. Maybe he knew it was bad from the beginning and, was just trying to stretch out as much time as he could.
And I told him that, don't you worry. The kids and I are gonna be okay. So if it's time, he can go. But before he closed his eyes, one by one, they talked to him.
I couldn't stop thanking him for the life that he's been able to give us, give me. He didn't need to take me along, but he did anyways. And I greatly appreciated everything that he's done, made me a better person, better man,
I told him how much I loved him. I told him thank you for being such a great dad. And I remember just throwing myself on top of him one more time and giving him one more hug.
My dad loved to laugh, and so anytime he would tell a joke, or if he would tease my mom, or if he saw me from across the room, he'd flash a wink at me. And so, I remember when it was my turn to go in. I went to go and talk to him. I don't remember what I said, but he winked at me.
In his final moments, he was looking at each of us in the room and locking eyes with us. And my dad died while I was holding his hand.
He passed away on June 7th, 2006, which was just, gosh, a couple weeks from his 43rd birthday and a couple months before his first grandkid. So.
You can never forget about it, you know? It's still hard.
It was Fred who called me about John. But those calls, for our era of guys, happened too many times. Too many times.
It was just horrible to hear it because he was such a sweet man.
John Tenta was laid to rest in Houston, Texas, surrounded by the love of his family, but without any representation from the business he devoted himself to for over 20 years.
There's no wrestlers. No flowers from the boss.
The amount of work that my dad had put out there, for the amount of punishment he put, his body through for entertainment and for his bosses, and I just wish that they would have, tried a little harder to reach out to him and to show more love, because he was a gentle giant and he would have done anything for anybody.
John and Jimmy Hart and my brother, who just passed away last July, we were a family on the road. This was my family. Talking about it now is heartbreaking for me when you lose a good friend like that.
I will always remember John because this is my sumo brother here. And that's how I am going to remember John forever. Brother.
He should be remembered as wrestler who lived the fullest. He came to Japan and he had very healthy, good run as a professional wrestler.
I stopped watching wrestling for years, and recently I've now been more interested in watching my dad's matches. I feel a sense of pride. I can watch them and I can be amazed that my dad did that.
He is a true legend, not just for his talent. Him as a person, he was the entire package. I love you, brother. I love you.
What is that picture of Mom and Dad right there?
Johnny's my love of my life. My soulmate. Well, this is the first picture of him and me. And he wrote something in the back too. So this was in 1986.
December
86?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What does it say on the back?
Would you like? This is our first picture taken together. I was so happy being with you. It made me feel so good. I can hardly wait until we are together all the time. Always remember, I love you, John. If you look up to the heaven, you're gonna see him smiling to see how the kids turned out.
He's proof that you can be nice and work really hard and leave an impact. My dad was many things to many different people, but to us, he was just a great dad. Yeah.
That he was going to be all right. If he can see it, he can do it. And I trust that. We have only seen one hell in a cell matchup in World Wrestling Federation history. And it was the most unbelievable match that I think I've ever witnessed. Jim Ross. I remember specifically thinking to myself, I need to come out with everything I've got. Just eyes on the prize. This match has so much riding on it, Jim Ross, that the loser may not even stop at the hospital. They may go straight to the morgue. There's that old saying, be careful what you wish for, you just might get it. Ladies and gentlemen, The following contest is the Hell in a Cell match. On June 28, 1998, at Pittsburgh Civic Arena, a packed house eagerly awaits the Hell in a Cell showdown between Undertaker and Mankind. Yeah, you gotta imagine the pressure that Mick's probably feeling as he's walking to the ring. You know, knowing that the last time an audience saw this match, it was Shawn and Taker. Knowing that he's got to outdo that. Poor Mick. He's not exactly the most nimble guy in the world either. My name is Jimmy Corderas. At the time of Hell in a Cell, I was part of the ring crew and also a referee. I was backstage watching on the monitors, and Gerald Briscoe was the one who produces there. I had the best seat in the house, sat right in front of about 10 monitors watching everything. So you were like basically sitting in the captain's seat during Hell in a Cell? I was the pilot, baby. This is probably the first time in 20 years that I've watched this match. No one knew what to anticipate. And I don't think anyone could have ever imagined what they were going to see. Hello again, everybody. I'm Jim Ross alongside Jerry the King Lawler. I was as much in the dark as a fan watching at home. I did want to start the match in a way nobody had ever started a match before, and to do something no one had ever done. I think there's a little bit of shock on everybody's face, like, he's going up now? He's going up at the beginning of the match? He's supposed to start out inside the cage, isn't he? What next? He's not very logical. I mean, he needs therapy. I had not been on top of the cell. I assured Mr. McMahon of The Undertaker, yeah, I've been up there. It's fine. But the truth is, when I got up there, I was terrified. I'm actually not good with heights. Whoa, it's totally dark in here. He may fall off that cell. The entire time The Undertaker's music is playing, I'm thinking to myself, how can I gracefully climb down this cell without ruining my career? Wait a minute. Do you think he's daring The Undertaker to start this match up there? I thought it was a hell of a way to start. The Hell in a Cell match is officially underway. It created a fear of the mind that one could not get past. Something's going to happen. What's going to happen? They had attached the top section of the cage with zip ties. But there's 600 pounds of human beings up there. The Undertaker and I both take a step, and that mesh goes down by about a foot. Oh my gosh, look at this, it broke through, and I literally hear zip ties springing. They're destroying the Hell in a Cell. When those zip ties were popping off, I thought, oh boy, this is not good. I attempt to suplex the Undertaker on top of that mesh. He cut that off knowing that, there was a decent chance we were both going to go through it. They're throwing punches, and they got toward the edge of the cage where the announce tables were. I thought when they got close to the edge, there's just no way in hell that Mitch is going to take a tumble off the top of the cage. That's too dangerous. That's too iffy. There's very little margin for error. I look at this incredibly small table like a little dollhouse. I don't know how in the world it's going to work out, and I don't like it a damn bit. And lo and behold, the closer they got to the edge of the cage, the more I became convinced that something big was going to happen here momentarily. And it did. Then all of a sudden, here's Jim Ross, and here's Jerry Lawler, as well as the Spanish announcers, and they're looking up, and a 300-pound human being is flung at them from almost 20 feet above them, and he's coming at them fast. As strange as it sounds, it felt like it was going by in slow motion. It also went by in the blink of an eye. All of a sudden you hear this. God, this crash. Holy shit, did we just see what we thought we saw? The sound of Nick going through the announcer table was scary as hell. Everyone that was in the back, we just exploded in concern. It was like witnessing a car accident. Who you will thought he was dead. This man just stopped dead in his tracks. In a business filled with crazy, strange things, nobody had ever tried to do something like this before. It blew everybody's mind, and I thought, my God, this is over. There's no way he's going to get back up. There was an audible gasp where everyone went no. We had 2 young children at the time, and they didn't know what to think of it. All I kept saying was, oh, it's fake, just to soothe them. Yet in the back of my mind, I'm freaking out. It's tough to know when it really, really, really is real. But it had to have hurt him, and it was believable. If the Undertaker threw him just a little too far, or a little too short, that's falling from God. Knows how high onto concrete, or could have even landed on fans. The pain would come later. I'm kind of flying high on adrenaline, and I pulled off this pretty lofty goal. Going through the table could not have gone better. He saw in his head, and in mid-air, he turned in such a way that he was able to land flat on that. Announced death to cushion that fall, and not kill him. And when it did happen, you should have heard the voices back there. Replay that, and you go into business mode where you're trying to get every great shot that you had. With it, Hugo Savinovic, the Spanish commentator, bailed out his chair instead of getting flattened. It was pretty traumatic, to be honest, because it was my friend out there and being torn with the rule that you don't step in, you don't interfere with whatever Nick was trying to construct. The fans were literally having this guy laying at their feet, and they're looking at all the attendants and the referees. I know Terry Funk was the first one to get there. I asked Terry, is he conscious right there? Now we're trying to make room for Dr. Francois to get there. So I was in my medical room, and suddenly I hear right now, come right now, Nick fell from the top of the cell. And I said, what? I am Dr. Francois Petit. I used to be the doctor for World Wrestling Federation for about 5 years on the road, and before that for about 9 years in Los Angeles. Francois was kind of like the French Army knife. Francois was a black belt in karate. He was a Sub-Zero in the first Mortal Kombat movie, probably a secret agent, and an investment banker. Francois was what I think they call them bone crackers. He could fix you. You probably wouldn't enjoy it, but he could put you back in place. No matter what the malady was, baby, I fix you. I fix you, baby, it'll be okay. You're going to have to put it back. Of course. He was my number one patient. I can't say something like that. Well, this is nuts what he did. He fell on his back badly, and on top of that, on his dislocated shoulder. The emergency medical technician people have no idea how to get the gurney down there, and it turns. Out the gurney wouldn't fit. So now they got to raise the cell with the Undertaker on it. He was put on that gurney like that was real. They were going to take him to the hospital. We thought the damn thing was over with. I mean, what else can they do? But we found out. I realized that the longer I'm on there, the more fully the audience is engaged. I've never seen anything like that in my life. Well, I'm not, but I've got a feeling that I'm going to be able to continue. Everybody was trying to tell him, no, Mick, you're done. Stop. What are you doing? Where are you going? Why are you doing this? Just stay down. Holy shit, he's coming back for more. I'm thinking this guy will be the craziest, dumbest son of a bitch in our business. How can he climb? How can his body at this point? I do not know how I'm going to do this and live. But I have pledged to do it, and I'm going to do it. This is absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing here. I'm thinking to myself, you're insane, you're an idiot. But at the same time that I'm thinking that was a moment that really made him a star. By then, backstage was packed because they know shit's going on. I stayed back where I was because I knew something else was going to happen. I knew. I guess at the end of the day, I'm glad that they went back up because it created another moment. It added to the storyline because sometimes you can storyline yourself right to the hospital. The next spot in the storyline pitched by Mick Foley was far less concerning, at least at first. We had already agreed on the one choke slam, which we thought would cause the match to gradually give way. And the big visual was going to be Undertaker, like stuffing me down. But that did not happen. And now, Houston, we got a problem. I thought that the destruction of the Foley body was well in hand. And that's enough. It was a completely different situation than when he got thrown off the top. You just know, I'm screaming at the television set. I am cursing. I was like trying to get the company on the phone, and I couldn't get through to anybody. How do you tell your children, oh, daddy's acting, laying there lifeless, motionless? This was not expected at all. I thought that was the end of him when he hit that solid mat. That ring is a concrete. The mat doesn't do it justice. It's more like hitting the cement. As he's falling, that metal-heavy, solid folding chair came right behind him. You could see when he lands that chair. Boom, there's a chair on his face. Boom. He could have very easily died. My mom thought he was dead also. I was shocked. I was screaming. I was furious. Because I thought he betrayed me by not telling me the truth that there was another spot. There we go. Choke slam. Oh, that was the first time in his career that he'd been legitimately knocked out cold. We all flooded the cage. Dr. Francois, Terry Funk, the guys that went out, they were thinking this might be the end. He was really not responsive at that point. I turn around and look at The Undertaker, and I say, okay, that's enough, because I saw his eyes not answering. Man, he landed in such a funky way. I didn't know that he was going to get up. I was legit scared for what the results were going to be. The Undertaker, he looked at Terry and said, see if he's alive. Terry reports back, he's still breathing. There were so many times when I'd seen stars, but I'd never been out for more than a couple seconds. And this time there's 42 seconds that I don't recall. Terry Funk took it into his own hands and walked up to Undertaker and said, hit me, so he could take the focus away from Mick a little bit, so everybody could tend to him. It's all ad-lib. It's all at the moment. If I'd ever seen a match that should have been stopped, that was probably the one. But he just didn't do it back then. We didn't stop matches. We bought time. And I needed every second that I could get. When I came to what I immediately saw, Terry Funk's shoes, I then realized I'm in this match, and that's where I try to stand. How is he still standing up? I don't have a damn clue. Oh my God, he is a freaking mess. It's really crazy to think that they would allow this to happen. Just like someone go unconscious, and then continue the match. As the clouds began to clear, I was all about trying to create an image for television. I've got a massive wound underneath my lip. And if I can find a way to take my tongue, stick it through that massive wound, it's going to make for a great television moment. And he's smiling. There's the tooth. How do you get hit in the face with a chair, and it knocks your tooth out, and it ends up in your nostril? One of the doctors said that it went into his throat, but because he was breathing so heavily that he had sucked it up the other way and came down through his nasal passage. Maybe a tooth? This match was real. The pain was real. The drama was real. The expressions on everybody's face were real. Real concern. You could look in his eyes and tell you there was nobody home. And I'm trying to talk to him. All he wanted to do is, we got to get you a tax. What is that? A car tax? This was their first appearance in World Wrestling Entertainment. I felt like I should be the guy to bring him over. He's purposely rolling around to make sure he gets all the thumbtacks on him as much as possible. When the adrenaline is taking over, you don't realize the pain anymore. You're part of the pain. You're pushing so far, you don't even know you're doing it. Mick is very big about come hell or high water, whatever it is, he will see it through. Finally, the 17-minute match comes to an end with The Undertaker defeating Mankind. What a spectacle it was. In that Pittsburgh Civic Arena, 16,000 people. We've never seen anything like this before. They brought the stretcher out because we thought it was needed for sure. But he waved it off and that crowd went absolutely insane. This was real as a heart attack. And the people could tell that puts the fans in the corner of this guy who just cannot be stopped. And that's the kind of shit that gets over. An audience has invested their time, their money, and their effort in one single thing. And that is the belief in you. He knew and understood that risking his well-being allows them to more thoroughly believe in him and the experience. Thank God this is over. We kept taking these chances, and another chance, and another chance. And for why? As long as I live, I will never forget what we just witnessed right there. He would always call and check in with me, let me know that he's okay. And now here comes the one pay-per-view where she really needs to know, and there's no phone call. I had to wait and wait and wait. It made me worry, and that anger came back. And a few hours later, Mick calls me. She was screaming at me, "Your children thought you were dead." I think prior to the cell, she prepared by trusting that I wasn't going to do anything to jeopardize the family. After that, it became a big concern. Mick came back through the curtain. I mean, everybody rushed up and wanted to check on him and make sure he was as okay as he could possibly be. One of the first people to greet Mick at the curtain was Vince McMahon. He said, "Mick, I want to thank you for what you've done for my company. And I want you to promise me that you will never do anything like it again and pull those thumbtacks out of him. I'm going backstage, and I overheard Mick say to Taker, did we do the thumbtack spot? He doesn't realize that the doctor is just plucking them out of him right now. When you love somebody and you respect them as much as I did Mick, my first thought was, are you okay? Are you really okay? I don't think he truly anticipated how severe that was going to be. Like that night, I had to help him get undressed and into bed. You know, he was messed up on that one. I think it was 15 stitches underneath the lip. Lost these 2 teeth. I don't even know if I was treated for a concussion. I had a bruised kidney for about 6 weeks. My jaw was dislocated. I can't remember which shoulder was dislocated, but you know what? That match changed the way people felt about me, and that's what really sparked a career. Renaissance. With what you did at Hell in a Cell, I want to publicly thank you. Going from Vince not wanting to see him in a World Wrestling Federation ring to 6 months after that match, he was world champion. The reaction, the pop, the adrenaline, the rush, the more he did, the more risks he took, it made me worry the bar kept just going up because it was never good enough. I think he felt like he had to live up to being the hardcore legend, continuing things that he probably shouldn't have. Mick, at that point, was about what are the limits of physical human endurance. He felt like he owed it to the guy he was working with. He owed it to the people to do something that they hadn't seen before. I remember not a scolding, but a warning. If you continue to try to do these type things, it's going to catch up with you. He understood, but he didn't agree with me. Just 7 months later, Mick Foley again pushes his limits. This time in a brutal showdown with The Rock in the infamous I Quit match. No stopping the match for excessive blood loss. I told Mick that's a horrible idea, but he was going to do what he needed to do and what he wanted to do. He's riding the big tidal waves. I also think it had something to do with my way of making it seem like everything was going to be all right. It was one of the worst days of my life. The I Quit match is underway. I had both children with me. It was super brutal from the beginning. I got carried away with The Rock. I had told him, laid in, Mick Foley is barely moving, and now The Rock has handcuffs. What the hell is he going to do now? He did, but instead of taking 5 shots, I took 11 shots. No, what the hell is Mick Foley doing? His kids were not old enough at that point to really ascertain what was fact and what was fiction. But also in the middle of this fiction, it was a fact. He got brain damage for a wrestling angle on television. Where does it end? What does it take now to put you down? Please, Mick, say I quit. So this sounds pretty bizarre, but I don't have one singular memory of my dad ever wrestling. Part of me thinks it's because it was very traumatic to me. Like, how could these 11 shots change my dad's health? Like, if you were to get 11 headshots, a normal person probably could have died. It's sickening, honestly. I really, really hate the I Quit match. Mick always wanted to over-deliver. And somewhere down the road, all of us need to ask ourselves the question, was it worth it? No. I understood that the style I chose was going to result in great discomfort. There were so many times where I could have made a move less painful, but I chose not to because I thought it would look better. No, there were a handful of doctors saying that you need to stop now. If you continue wrestling, you'll wind up crippled. Do you think that stopped him? I still thought I had one good match left in me, and so I set about trying to delay the inevitable. There were times when he should not have been wrestling. He shouldn't have been cleared. He'd drive around and not remember where he lived. Concussion on top of concussion on top of concussion. My appointment with the World Wrestling Entertainment neurologist had not gone particularly well, so I booked an appointment independent of World Wrestling Entertainment. I'll never forget what he told me. He said, Mr. Foley, if you want to try to find another neurologist to clear you, that's up to you. But I'm telling you, you should never wrestle again. If you push those physical limits like Mick has, you're definitely going to pay a price. Sadly, Mick is paying that price right now. Back then, we didn't know the long-term effects of concussions. When guys take a bump, they have an impact in the ring, similar to experiencing a 25-mile-per-hour car accident. I can only imagine the type of pain that Mick has to live with. He's paid the price for all this fame. Mick is very special, and he's lucky he's still with us. Chronic traumatic encephalopathy is a very scary disease that is a long-term effect of repetitive concussions and brain trauma. We don't really know how my dad will be doing in 10, 20 years or so. If you're wondering if I'm worried about that, yeah, really worried. Every day, I worry about that. The fallout from what I'd done, I don't see a way out of it. That's one of the most respected and beloved men to ever compete in our business. But I'm going to fight it. I'm going to try to be someone who continues to get sharper as they get older. And so I have these spoken word shows. It's like mental gymnastics for my mind. And I hear the crowd chanting Undertaker. Putting on a show, having that stimulation from people, that keeps him going. I could either appreciate what I have, or I could live in complete fear about the unknown. So I'm going to continue to enjoy myself. He lived his dream. He made his dream. He needs to feel accepted, especially around his legacy. I tell him, go, do the things you like to do, but don't push your luck. Colette knew that I was kind of my own worst enemy when I was in the ring. We dress up in wild costumes and engage in a fantasy form of combat that leaves a lot of us in worse condition than we arrived at, and we do it to earn the acceptance of total strangers. For me, it was all about the reactions, the eyes lighting up, my desire to be authentic. I definitely wanted to be loved. All the sacrifices you put your physique through just for the roar of them. I like that roar. You can't say that the fault without also admitting that it's responsible for my success. Mick Foley is known for many things. He's a multiple-time champion. He's donated time and energy to charities. But what he's known for is Hell in a Cell. For years, I really harbored some resentment for that match because it was the only thing that I was known for. I was in a dark place for a while. On one hand, I knew I'd done a lot in wrestling. On the other hand, I felt like I'd accomplished nothing at all. The Undertaker and we were reminiscing, and he says, "You know, Jack, what we did that night will outlive us both." That was a major step in embracing that moment. That's what I got out of wrestling for, to try to create moments like that. I think fans are going to remember him as a guy who gave his heart and soul to this business and appreciate him immensely for it. The audience is coming to be in awe because few people in the world can put you in awe. And those people do. This is the beauty of it. Me and my dad, we were at the World Wrestling Entertainment Warehouse, and we came across the cell. My dad certainly wasn't expecting to see it. He touched it, and he just started tearing up and started crying. I've never seen my dad cry. For something to make him cry must have been really important and life-changing and also probably pretty scary. Like, this could have been it. I'm lucky I'm here after that. There's no reward big enough to cover that risk. We did not know nearly as much about head injuries as we do now, but I can't tell you with certainty that I would have done things different if I had known that. I felt like the world had offered me this canvas to create surreal, sublime performance art. There were some bumps in the road, but it was a pretty magical way to make a living. On certain nights when things were really good, it was one of the most powerful feelings in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome inside the squared circle of human history. Tonight, we pull back the heavy, blood-stained curtain of professional wrestling to examine one of its most defining, harrowing, and complex chapters. We are looking back at the dark side of an industry built on smoke, mirrors, and absolute physical sacrifice. On June 28, 1998, at the World Wrestling Federation King of the Ring pay-per-view event, two extraordinary talents stepped out for a match that would instantly earn its place as one of the most shocking spectacles in sports history. The Undertaker versus Mankind in a Hell in a Cell structure. That structure hits you like a mallet to the consciousness. Many knew it was going to be extreme, but very few anticipated the sheer madness that unfolded when two individuals pushed the envelope right over the edge. Professional wrestling features heavily choreographed performances, but gravity remains entirely unyielding. Nothing frightened industry veterans quite as much as the initial moments of that encounter, setting a terrifying tone for the carnage that followed. What left fans around the globe utterly stunned was the unrelenting, brutal punishment that Mick Foley endured, until witnessed with one's own eyes. It felt physically impossible for a human being to absorb such punishment and survive. This match was entirely real. The pain was real. The high-stakes drama was real. Behind the scenes, colleagues watched in sheer horror, screaming and cursing, questioning the sanity of what was unfolding. Why push the human body to such absolute extremes? Every individual who enters the world of professional wrestling is often searching for something they feel is missing in their personal lives. For Mick Foley, years of being teased in his youth created an overwhelming psychological need to be liked, to be accepted, and to eventually capture that prestigious World Wrestling Federation Championship belt, long before the bright lights of the global stage. Young Foley sought powerful reactions through increasingly dangerous stunts. During his college sophomore years, he filmed a daring leap off a bed onto a stuffed object on a concrete floor, utilizing red food coloring to simulate severe injury. When dormitory onlookers reacted with shock and disgust, a powerful realization took root. If he could not always make people love him, perhaps he could elicit shock and awe. He simply needed strong reactions. His name is Mick Foley, widely known to the world as the hardcore legend, and he is a survivor of the infamous Hell in a Cell. Many wrestling enthusiasts point to Hell in a Cell as the ultimate gateway match that turned them into lifelong fans. Yet, a crucial question always remains. Did viewers expect every single match to follow that destructive blueprint? The reality of the industry is starkly different. A standard Mick Foley match was already famously brutal, featuring heavy bloodshed, thumbtacks, and fiery environments. From battling with barbed wire in Japan to experiencing explosions from chemical devices and taking unprotected falls onto unforgiving concrete, Foley repeatedly put his physical vessel through unimaginable trauma. His family lived in the shadow of this relentless physical toll. Noelle Foley, his daughter, often witnessed the aftermath of a father who did not feel he had a successful night unless he struggled simply to return to his hotel room. Realism was his primary tool. He did not necessarily enjoy the agonizing pain itself, but rather the unique ability to absorb it, process it, and sell in a way that entertained the masses. Behind the chaos stood Colette Foley, who had known Mick for over 35 years. Beneath the wild persona lay a gentle, kind human being whose corny humor and genuine warmth originally won her heart. Their wedding song was fittingly Beauty and the Beast. They formed a cohesive team where she deeply understood his intense commitment. When the competitive adrenaline surged, his ultimate drive was ensuring that audiences left the arena talking about an unforgettable show, regardless of the personal physical cost. Along the way, this unrelenting drive birthed alternate personas, most notably Cactus Jack. According to industry veteran Jim Cornette, who served as an agent and producer for the World Wrestling Federation at the time, Foley possessed an extraordinary grasp of match psychology. He understood precisely how to manipulate crowd emotions, leaning into chaotic behaviors that defied standard scripting, thereby pulling the audience entirely into his chaotic orbit before reaching the global spotlight. Foley immersed himself in the intense styling of Japanese wrestling, sometimes consuming 12 hours of footage daily. He appreciated the profound realism and storytelling, where a competitor had to overcome not just an opponent, but the hazardous surroundings themselves. Japan became the proving ground where he developed bloody, fiery death matches alongside Terry Funk, a legendary figure renowned for his peerless ability to make audiences suspend disbelief instantly within the World Wrestling Federation of that era. The television product maintained a relatively bland, family-friendly presentation. Foley's violent, unconventional style initially did not align with what the corporate leadership actively marketed. Al Snow, a former superstar, close travel partner, and trusted confidant, notes that Vince McMahon initially harbored strong reservations about Mick Foley, viewing him as unmarketable and unconventional. However, Jim Ross, serving as Vice President of Talent Relations, recognized an urgent need for reliable opponents to challenge top-tier superstars like The Undertaker, who stood tall as one of the most monumental figures in wrestling history. Management had repeatedly relied on traditional giants to face The Undertaker, creating predictable dynamics. What the roster truly needed was an unpredictable wild card. Stories suggest that McMahon eventually relented, consenting to bring Foley in while intending to obscure his face behind a mask, initially viewing him as a blank slate. Thus, the persona of Mankind was born. Gerald Briscoe, a WWE Hall of Famer, recalls a unique challenge handed to the creative team to build a complex character around essentially an unproven concept. Yet, without a deep connection to the audience, character mechanics mean very little. Fans could instantly sense Mick's unwavering commitment. Jim Ross established a clear goal. Mankind needed to serve as a formidable, unpredictable adversary for The Undertaker, a performer who famously turned down nothing except the bed covers in his relentless pursuit of greatness. Having already built a substantial foundation across multiple pay-per-view and television encounters, both competitors felt their respective characters had plateaued by 1998. During preparations for the upcoming King of the Ring event, WWF producers sought to reignite the fierce rivalry through a newly engineered concept known as Hell in a Cell. Traditional cage matches allowed competitors to escape by climbing over the top or walking through the door. Seeking innovation, management introduced a fully enclosed roof. 2 men enter and only one walks out. While the inaugural Hell in a Cell between The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels set a legendary benchmark, the upcoming sequel required an entirely new level of audacity. Discussing potential ideas with Terry Funk, Foley half-seriously floated an extreme concept. What if the match actually commenced on top of the steel structure? And what if he was physically thrown off? While initially suggested in jest, the idea quickly took root in Foley's relentless mindset. Despite initial hesitation and concerns from producers and opponents regarding safety margins, Foley remained resolute. He viewed the high-stakes encounter not as a glamorous second act, but as a desperate attempt to keep his career afloat amid mounting physical deterioration. The Undertaker trusted his colleague's vision, acknowledging that if Foley could envision a spot, he possessed the determination to execute it. On June 28, 1998, at the Pittsburgh Civic Arena, a capacity crowd eagerly awaited the collision. Jimmy Corderas, serving as a ring crew member and referee, monitored the action from backstage production monitors, sitting close to the control center alongside Gerald Briscoe. Nobody inside the arena could possibly anticipate the unprecedented scenes about to unfold. As Jim Ross and Jerry the King Lawler welcomed television viewers, Mankind executed an unprecedented move, immediately scaling the exterior of the steel cage prior to the official bell. The crowd reacted with instant shock as Foley navigated the unfamiliar heights. Admitting later to a severe fear of heights, Foley attempted to maintain composure while scaling the dark structure. The match officially commenced, creating an immediate psychological atmosphere of pure dread. The top section of the cage had been temporarily secured using standard zip ties. However, the combined weight of 2 heavy human beings caused the steel mesh to sag dangerously, snapping zip ties under immense pressure and signaling immediate structural peril, as both competitors exchanged strikes near the edge of the cage. Closing in on the Spanish announce table position far below, veteran observers held their breath. The margin for error was virtually non-existent. Without warning, a 300-pound human being was violently hurled from a height of nearly 20 feet, plummeting rapidly toward the announcer's desk. The terrifying crash echoed through the arena in what felt simultaneously like slow motion and the blink of an eye. The physical impact shattered the wooden table completely. leaving the audience and backstage personnel in stunned silence. Colleagues watching backstage experienced profound panic, likening the visual to a catastrophic traffic accident. Hugo Savinovic, the Spanish commentator, narrowly avoided direct impact by diving clear of his chair just in time. Miraculously, through precise spatial awareness in midair, Foley managed to flatten his landing enough to absorb the catastrophic blow without suffering fatal injuries. Medical personnel, including Dr. Francois Petit, a trained martial artist and veteran company physician known affectionately as a bone cracker, rushed frantically to the scene. Due to logistical constraints preventing medical carts from reaching the ringside area, the steel cage had to be temporarily elevated with the Undertaker still atop it, allowing emergency workers to place Foley on a stretcher, to the absolute astonishment of everyone in attendance. As medical teams prepared to transport him toward an ambulance, Foley refused to remain down. Driven by an intense desire to maximize audience engagement and complete the narrative, he defied medical warnings, stood back up, and demanded to continue the match. Backstage personnel watched in disbelief, questioning the sanity of a competitor willing to walk back into the jaws of danger, returning to the top of the cell alongside The Undertaker. The storyline progressed toward its next planned sequence, a targeted chokeslam intended to gradually compromise the steel mesh. However, structural integrity failed catastrophically. The heavy steel panel gave way entirely, sending Foley plummeting directly through the cage roof and into the canvas below. As he crashed into the wooden ring mat, which offered virtually no give, resembling solid concrete, a heavy steel folding chair plummeted right behind him, striking him directly in the face upon impact. This catastrophic blow rendered Foley legitimately unconscious for the first time in his professional career, leaving him completely unresponsive for a measured 42 seconds. Backstage family members watching the broadcast experienced sheer terror. Colette Foley watched in horror as her children witnessed their father lying motionless, forced to reassure them that the performance was fictional while experiencing genuine panic internally. Terry Funk bravely stepped toward The Undertaker, demanding physical engagement to deflect crowd attention, while medical staff swarmed the ring to tend to the incapacitated competitor. As consciousness slowly returned, Foley's physical state was catastrophic. A massive wound beneath his lip allowed his tongue to push through, a gruesome visual he consciously utilized for television impact. Furthermore, a tooth dislodged by the chair strike had traveled through his nasal passage rather than his throat due to heavy respiration. Despite suffering a dislocated jaw, severe concussions, separated shoulder, bruised kidneys, and numerous lacerations, Foley insisted on finishing the encounter. The 17-minute spectacle finally concluded with The Undertaker securing the victory. 16,000 fans inside the Pittsburgh Civic Arena erupted as Foley waved away the stretcher, walking under his own power. That raw authenticity solidified an unbreakable bond with the audience, elevating his career to unprecedented heights. Yet, the physical cost was staggering. Upon returning backstage, Vince McMahon expressed deep gratitude while explicitly demanding a promise that Foley would never attempt such dangerous stunts again. Even as medical staff plucked embedded thumbtacks from his battered flesh, the physical fallout was severe. Weeks of recovery involved 15 stitches, lost teeth, unaddressed concussions, and lingering internal injuries. Yet, the career renaissance was undeniable. Within a mere 6 months following that fateful night, Mick Foley ascended to capture the World Wrestling Federation Championship. However, the relentless pursuit of greatness continued to push physical limits upward. Just 7 months later, Foley engaged in another notoriously brutal encounter, the infamous I Quit match against The Rock. Despite warnings from colleagues regarding excessive physical trauma and unprotected chair strikes, Foley insisted on executing the planned sequence. The resulting 11 unprotected headshots delivered during the match shocked viewers and family members alike, crossing the line from athletic performance into severe physical endangerment. As years progressed, the cumulative toll of repeated concussions, compared by medical experts to the impact equivalent of multiple 25-mile-per-hour automobile accidents, began manifesting in profound health concerns. Independent neurological evaluations delivered a definitive verdict. Continued athletic competition would result in permanent physical disability and severe neurological complications, including the looming threat of chronic traumatic encephalopathy, a degenerative brain disease linked to repetitive head trauma. Foley acknowledged the heavy price paid for decades of fame and adulation, while he discovered new outlets for engagement, such as spoken word performances that provided mental stimulation. The private anxieties regarding long-term cognitive health remained constant. Reflecting upon his storied career, Foley recognized that the reckless sacrifices made for the roar of the crowd were inseparable from the immense success he achieved. The legacy of Hell in a Cell remains complex, haunted by the ghost of extreme physical risk, yet cemented as an immortal milestone in professional wrestling history. Standing years later inside a WWE warehouse alongside his daughter Noelle and coming face-to-face with the preserved steel structure, the memories rush back, bringing tears to the eyes of a hardened legend who survived the ultimate test of human endurance. On June 28, 1998, at the WWF's King of the Ring pay-per-view, inside the Pittsburgh Civic Arena, a packed house of 16,000 souls eagerly awaited a showdown that would etch its name into the bedrock of professional wrestling history. Undertaker versus Mankind, inside Hell in a Cell. Hell in a Cell hits you like a mallet to the consciousness. You know it is going to be extreme. But human imagination fails until you witness the threshold where performance bleeds into raw, unfiltered reality. Wrestling is theater, but you can never fake gravity. Veterans of the squared circle have been frightened by many things throughout the decades. But nothing paralyzed observers quite like the initial moments of that match, and what would follow as the minutes ticked away. What left fans stunned was the unrelenting punishment Mick Foley endured, until you saw it with your own eyes. Human cognition refused to accept that a person could physically subject themselves to such devastation and continue to draw breath. This match was real. The pain was real. The drama was real. Behind the curtain and across the broadcasting desks, professionals were cursing, screaming, and questioning the very sanity of what was unfolding. Why would anyone push the envelope until it falls completely over the edge? To understand the spectacle, one must examine the mind of the man behind the mask. Everyone who enters the professional wrestling industry is searching for something missing in their own lives. For Mick Foley, childhood teasing forged an overwhelming need to be liked, to find acceptance, and ultimately to capture that World Wrestling Federation championship belt. Memories trace back to his sophomore year in college, when he took a swig of red food coloring and performed a death-defying leap off a dorm bed onto a stuffed object over a concrete floor. As he spat out the concoction, the reaction of the crowd below gave him a potent revelation. If he could not always make people love him, perhaps he could shock them, disgust them, and above all, make them feel something. He just needed reactions. He became known as a hardcore legend, a man who survived Hell in a Cell. Yet, Hell in a Cell serves as a fascinating gateway. So many fans point to that specific match as their introduction to the sport. The critical follow-up question is always whether they expected every match to be like that, because they certainly were not. A normal Mick Foley match was already brutal, featuring blood, thumbtacks, fire, barbed wire, and even exposure to high-explosive devices during his tenure in Japan. His family watched in a mixture of awe and terror, recognizing that realism was his primary tool. He did not necessarily enjoy the pain itself. Rather, he enjoyed the unique ability to absorb it and sell it in a way that resonated with the audience. His journey was shaped by partnerships and mentors who understood the psychology of the business. Colette Foley, his wife of over 35 years, recognized the gentle soul beneath the bizarre exterior, yet understood the relentless drive that pushed him onward. Jim Cornette, working as an agent and producer for the WWF at the time, noted that Mick possessed an elite grasp of match psychology. He understood that fans were drawn to figures who felt out of control, individuals who seemingly went off script and took the audience on a wild ride. Long before reaching the bright lights of the WWF, Foley spent countless hours studying Japanese wrestling tapes, fascinated by the realism, the storytelling, and the concept of man versus surroundings. That path led him to fierce death matches in Japan alongside Terry Funk, a legendary figure renowned for making audiences suspend disbelief instantly. Those violent, fiery encounters proved to Foley that he could stand out through sheer audacity. Operating far outside the traditional G-rated mold that the WWF was presenting during that era, Al Snow, his travel partner and close confidant, often noted the uphill battle Foley faced. Vince McMahon initially did not want Mick Foley, doubting his marketability and physical appearance. However, through persistent advocacy from key personnel like Jim Ross, Vice President of Talent Relations, who needed dynamic dancing partners for top stars like The Undertaker, the door was finally opened. McMahon famously remarked that they would bring him in, cover his face, and see what could be built around a blank slate. Thus, Mankind was born, utilizing a character that pulled his own hair out and defied conventional logic. Foley forged an undeniable connection with the audience through sheer commitment. The Undertaker and Mankind had already laid a formidable foundation across multiple pay-per-view and television matches around the globe. Yet, as 1998 rolled on, Foley felt his character had plateaued. When brainstorming for the King of the Ring pay-per-view, producers sought to reignite the rivalry using a newly conceived structure, Hell in a Cell. While the inaugural cell match between The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels set a high benchmark, Foley and Terry Funk jokingly discussed an even more outrageous premise during a conversation. What if the match actually started on top of the cage? What if Mankind was thrown off? What began as dark humor quickly morphed into a terrifying reality. Despite initial reservations from producers, Foley remained dead set on the idea, viewing it not as a grand second act, but as a desperate attempt to keep his career afloat. The Undertaker trusted his partner's vision, unaware of the sheer magnitude of the historical moment they were about to create. As the match got underway inside the Pittsburgh Civic Arena, the atmosphere crackled with palpable tension. Breaking all convention, Mankind bypassed the interior entirely, climbing directly to the roof of the 20-foot structure before the bell even rang. Foley later confessed that despite assuring management he was fine with heights, he was genuinely terrified, with the cage roof secured only by zip ties. The combined weight of two heavy athletes immediately caused a mesh to dip. Then the unthinkable happened. Trading blows near the edge of the cage, the inevitable collision arrived in a blur. Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler watched in absolute horror as a 300-pound human being was flung from 20 feet above, crashing violently through the Spanish announce table below. The sound of the impact was described by witnesses as terrifying, ressembling à catastrophique car accident. Backstage personnel exploded in immediate concern, fearing the worst. Miraculously, through precise spatial awareness and execution, Foley managed to absorb enough of the desk to cushion the blow, though the physical toll was immense. Dr. Francois Petit, the traveling physician for the promotion, rushed to the scene alongside referees and crew members in a display of sheer stubbornness that defied medical logic. Foley refused to stay down. Despite a dislocated shoulder and severe trauma, he climbed back up the cage, determined to finish what he started. What followed next surpassed even the first fall. During a planned sequence, a choke slam caused the cage mesh to give way entirely, sending Foley crashing face first into the canvas below. A heavy steel folding chair, plummeting right behind him, struck him directly in the face. That impact resulted in the first legitimate knockout of his career, leaving him unresponsive for over 40 seconds. Terry Funk courageously stepped into the fray, urging The Undertaker to strike him to draw attention away from Foley, who lay motionless. Medical staff rushed into the ring as fans watched in stunned silence. Yet, true to form, as consciousness slowly returned, Foley noticed a massive wound under his lip and deliberately positioned his tongue through it to maximize the visual impact for television, even losing teeth that somehow traveled through his nasal passages into chaos. The 17-minute spectacle finally concluded with The Undertaker securing the victory, but the aftermath transcended athletic competition. Walking back through the curtain, greeted by a relieved Vince McMahon and a concerned locker room, Foley was a physical wreck. He suffered 15 stitches under his lip, lost teeth, sustained a bruised kidney, a dislocated jaw, and severe concussions. Yet, that single match fundamentally altered public perception, sparking an incredible career renaissance that propelled him toward the World Heavyweight Championship just months later. However, the physical debt of such daring performances could not be avoided forever. Only 7 months later, Foley pushed his body to the absolute limit once more in an infamous I Quit match against The Rock, enduring 11 unprotected chair shots to the head. Medical professionals warned him of the severe risks of repetitive head trauma, but the relentless drive to over-deliver for the audience kept him moving forward long after his body begged him to stop. Independent neurological evaluations later made the stark reality clear. Continuing to wrestle would lead to permanent disability. The long-term effects of concussions, now understood in the context of chronic traumatic encephalopathy and brain trauma, cast a long shadow over the legacy of the hardcore legend. Today, Foley navigates those lingering consequences with spoken word performances and mental engagement, reflecting openly on a career built on sacrifice, validation, and the pursuit of connection. Looking back at the steel structure that defined his legacy, a moment captured alongside his daughter at a WWE warehouse where he touched the original cell and wept, the duality of professional wrestling becomes starkly apparent. There is no reward large enough to fully cover the risk, yet on certain magical nights, the shared energy between performer and audience created an unmatched form of surreal art. The legacy of Mick Foley remains as a man who gave his absolute heart and soul to the business, leaving an indelible mark that will outlive them both. On June 28, 1998, at the World Wrestling Federation King of the Ring pay-per-view event, a match took place that would permanently alter the landscape of professional wrestling. The encounter between The Undertaker and Mankind inside the Hell in a cell structure remains one of the most shocking and defining spectacles in sports entertainment history. When viewers witness Hell in a Cell, it strikes the consciousness with the force of a heavy mallet. Industry veterans knew the pairing of these two performers would push boundaries, but few could have predicted the sheer magnitude of the recklessness that unfolded. Professional wrestling involves elaborate storytelling and rehearsed athleticism, but gravity remains an undeniable reality. Experienced observers noted that nothing in their decades around the industry had ever generated the level of sheer terror that this match produced in its opening moments, and the dread only intensified as the contest wore on. Fans around the globe were left paralyzed by the unrelenting physical punishment endured by Mick Foley, until witnesses saw it with their own eyes. Human comprehension refused to accept that a person could subject their physical form to such catastrophic trauma and survive. This was not a conventional athletic competition. The pain was entirely real. The dramatic tension was palpable, and veteran commentators found themselves screaming curses at the monitors, shouting in disbelief at what they perceived as utter madness. The lingering legacy of Hell in a Cell persists as both a monumental triumph of spectator engagement and a chilling cautionary tale. Industry insiders later reflected that multiple catastrophic disasters were narrowly avoided that fateful evening. The tolerance system that allowed an unconscious athlete to be revived and permitted to continue. Competing points to a darker institutional reality. The collateral damage accrued during those 15 minutes in the spotlight demands a heavy toll. Later in life, it raises a fundamental question that every performer and promoter must confront. At what point does the violence become excessive, and was the ultimate price truly worth paying? Every individual who enters the grueling world of professional wrestling is frequently searching for something missing within their personal lives. For Mick Foley, childhood teasing created an overwhelming psychological need to be accepted by audiences and an ambition to capture the coveted World Wrestling Federation Championship belt. During his sophomore year in college, a theatrical stunt involving red food coloring, a leap from a high bed onto a stuffed object on a concrete floor, and a simulated blood expulsion in front of dorm mates revealed a potent psychological truth. When immediate adoration proved elusive, the power to provoke shock and disgust provided an alternative avenue for validation. Eliciting strong reactions became an absolute necessity. Mick Foley carved out a legendary career known for extreme physicality. Yet Hell in a Cell served as the ultimate gateway for modern fandom. While casual viewers might assume every encounter featured such extreme hazards, standard matches rarely approach the level of brutality involving thumbtacks, barbed wire, fire, and punishing concrete falls seen in Foley's broader body of work. Family members, including his wife Colette and his children Noel and Mick Jr., watched in a mixture of awe and horror as a husband and father subjected his body to relentless punishment just to elicit gasps of shock and disgust from the paying public. Realism was the primary tool in Foley's arsenal. He measured the success of a match by his physical inability to easily return to his hotel room. Afterward, Colette Foley, who spent over 35 years alongside him, recognized the gentle, humorous nature beneath the scars, yet understood the driving adrenaline that compelled her husband to risk everything simply to ensure fans left the arena talking about an unforgettable spectacle. To navigate the brutal territories of the industry, Foley developed alternate personas, most notably Cactus Jack, a wild and unpredictable character defined by raw charisma and a distinct disregard for standard boundaries. Behind-the-scenes producers and agents, such as Jim Cornette and Gerald Briscoe, understood that Foley possessed an elite grasp of match psychology. He recognized that audiences gravitated toward performers who appeared entirely out of control, individuals willing to shatter the script to take fans on a volatile emotional ride. Long before his major platform in the national spotlight, Foley spent hours studying Japanese wrestling tapes, fascinated by the gritty realism, intense storytelling, and environmental hazards where competitors fought not just each other, but the surrounding structures. Japan provided a brutal proving ground where Foley crossed paths with Terry Funk, widely regarded as a master of selling disbelief. Their violent, bloody, and fiery death matches forged a hardened resilience in Foley, convincing him that standing out through extreme risk was his only path to survival. At the time, the World Wrestling Federation operated under a clean, broadcast-friendly banner that did not mesh easily with Foley's punishing aesthetic. Vince McMahon initially rejected Foley, deeming him unmarketable and unattractive. However, talent relations executive Jim Ross and travel partner Al Snow persistently advocated for Foley, arguing that the roster desperately required a chaotic lunatic who could serve as a credible challenger for the promotion's ultimate cornerstone, The Undertaker. Reluctantly, management agreed to bring him in, shrouding his identity behind a leather mask and dubbing him Mankind. It was a bizarre, grotesque concept centered on a character who pulled his own hair out and shrieked in dark corners, a bogus premise that would have utterly failed with almost anyone other than Mick Foley. His absolute commitment breathed life into fiction, establishing him as the ideal foil for The Undertaker's mythic stature. By the summer of 1994, following numerous pay-per-view encounters, the Mankind and Undertaker pairing had plateaued creatively. To revitalize the feud for the upcoming King of the Ring event, World Wrestling Federation producers leaned into a recently innovated match stipulation known as Hell in a Cell, originally conceptualized to keep competitors enclosed with a roof over the ring. The first iteration between The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels set a towering standard. Seeking to surpass that milestone, Foley consulted Terry Funk, who jokingly suggested starting the match on top of the cage and getting thrown off, What began as dark humor quickly metastasized into a concrete plan. Foley convinced a skeptical Undertaker and management that he could execute the stunt safely. Behind the scenes, family members and colleagues experienced mounting anxiety, while Foley viewed the gamble merely as a desperate maneuver to keep his career afloat, operating under the assumption that his physical window was rapidly closing. On June 28, 1998, at the Pittsburgh Civic Arena, 16,000 eager fans packed the venue. Referee Jimmy Corderas and producer Gerald Briscoe monitored the monitors backstage as the atmosphere reached a fever pitch. Breaking all convention, Mankind bypassed the interior entirely, climbing directly to the summit of the 20-foot steel structure before the bell even rang. Foley later confessed that despite assuring management he was comfortable, a profound fear of heights paralyzed him once he reached the roof in the darkness. As the structure groaned under the combined weight of two heavy athletes, plastic zip ties securing the mesh panels began to snap underfoot. The margin for error evaporated entirely. Approaching the edge near the Spanish announce tables, the tension reached an unbearable threshold. Millions watching across the globe witnessed an unforgettable visual as the Undertaker hurled a 300-pound human being from the top of the cage through the air in what felt simultaneously like slow motion and the blink of an eye. The resulting crash through the wooden table sounded like a catastrophic vehicular collision. Backstage personnel reacted with explosive panic, fearing the worst. Commentators Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler expressed genuine horror on live television. Miraculously, Foley had managed to adjust his trajectory mid-air, absorbing the impact flat across the desk to cushion the fall. Yet, the physical cost was immediate and severe. Medical personnel, including Dr. Francois Petit, rushed to ringside as chaotic scenes unfolded. A dislocated shoulder and severe trauma left Foley immobilized on a stretcher, and many backstage assumed the contest was concluded. However, driven by an obsessive desire to maximize audience engagement and complete the narrative arc, Foley refused to stay down. Against all medical logic and the frantic pleas of colleagues begging him to remain stationary, he staggered back to his feet, climbed the exterior ladder a second time, and re-entered the steel cage. What followed surpassed even the initial shock. During a planned sequence meant to culminate in a choke slam, the weakened steel mesh unexpectedly gave way. Mankind plummeted from the top of the cell directly into the ring canvas, crashing violently onto the solid mat alongside a heavy steel folding chair that struck him squarely in the face. The impact knocked Foley unconscious for 42 agonizing seconds, the first time in his professional career he was legitimately rendered completely unresponsive. The ring flooded with frantic personnel, including Terry Funk and Dr. Francois Petit, who checked vital signs while uncertainty gripped the arena. In a brilliant display of veteran improvisation, Terry Funk confronted The Undertaker to draw physical focus away from the fallen athlete while medical checks continued. As consciousness slowly returned, Foley realized his teeth had been dislodged, with one tooth infamously driven through his nasal passage, emerging visibly from his nostril, displaying a surreal commitment to showmanship. Foley grinned through a massive wound beneath his lip, deliberately rolling through scattered metal thumbtacks to maximize the visual impact for television viewers. After 17 minutes of grueling punishment, the match concluded with The Undertaker securing the victory, but the lasting impact belonged entirely to the resilience of Mankind. Waving away the stretcher, Foley walked out of the arena to a deafening ovation from 16,000 stunned fans. Backstage, Vince McMahon expressed profound relief, explicitly asking Foley to promise never to repeat such a reckless stunt. Yet the physical toll was profound: 15 stitches beneath the lip, 2 lost teeth, a dislocated jaw, a bruised kidney lasting 6 weeks, and a severe concussion history that would plague him for the remainder of his life. Despite the horrific toll, the performance triggered an unprecedented career renaissance. transforming Foley from an undervalued performer into a global phenomenon and, within months, a World Wrestling Federation champion. The relentless escalation of physical risk did not stop with Hell in a Cell. Just 7 months later, Foley pushes physical limits even further during an infamous I Quit match against The Rock at the Royal Rumble. Rejecting warnings from colleagues, Foley endured 11 unprotected steel chair shots directly to the head, while handcuffed, pushing human endurance past safe boundaries and inflicting cumulative brain damage for the sake of television entertainment. As years passed, the long-term consequences of repetitive concussions became starkly apparent. Independent neurological evaluations delivered a definitive verdict. Further athletic competition would result in permanent physical disability. Friends, family members, and medical professionals watched with growing concern as the legacy of extreme sacrifice manifested as chronic pain and neurological uncertainty. Colette Foley and their children reflected on the immense anxiety of watching a loved one trade. Long-term hell for the transient roar of approval from strangers. Today, Mick Foley navigates the complex aftermath of his historic career through spoken-word performances and public appearances, maintaining a connection with the fan base that adores him. While moments of regret and haunting memories of the cell remain, Foley acknowledges that the very impulses responsible for his injuries were also the foundation of his historic success. Standing inside a WWE warehouse years later and touching a surviving panel of the original steel, Cage brought tears to his eyes, a poignant reminder of a unique era when performance art crossed into genuine peril. The legacy of Hell in a Cell remains an indelible chapter in sports entertainment history, leaving viewers to forever ponder the ultimate human cost of chasing greatness. On June the 28th, 1998, at the World Wrestling Federation King of the Ring pay-per-view event, an athletic contest took place that would forever etch its name into the annals of sports entertainment history. It was The Undertaker versus Mankind inside the demonic structure known as Hell in a Cell. When you stand before the Hell in a Cell structure, it hits you like a mallet straight to the consciousness. Everyone knew it was going to be intense, but nobody, absolutely nobody, anticipated it reaching that level of sheer madness. Here were two elite performers who consistently loved to push the envelope until it fell right over. The edge. Professional wrestling is scripted, yes, but you simply cannot fake gravity. Many veterans of the squared circle have witnessed terrifying moments throughout their careers, but few things matched the sheer dread felt that night, and the terror only escalated as the match progressed. What left millions of fans around the globe utterly stunned was the unrelenting, brutal punishment that Mick Foley endured. Until you watched it unfold with your own eyes, you simply could not believe that a human being could subject their physical form to such destruction and somehow remain alive. This match was entirely real. The pain was real. The agonizing drama was real. Behind the scenes and across the arenas, veterans and executives were cursing, screaming, and openly calling him an absolute idiot. Why would anyone willingly subject themselves to such torment? Hell in a Cell stands today as one of the most infamous matches in professional wrestling history, a legacy that persists simultaneously as an epic triumph of storytelling and a sobering cautionary tale. Looking back, those closest to the industry feel that everyone involved dodged multiple bullets that fateful day, not just one, but several close brushes with tragedy. It remains a staggering realization that officials allowed a performer to lose consciousness and then simply continue the match. The collateral damage that ensued in the following years is a completely different story. When does it finally stop? When is enough truly enough? A performer pays all day long for the rest of their lives, for the decisions made during those 15 minutes in the spotlight. It was a dangerously insane masterpiece, but every single person involved and everyone who watches must eventually ask the ultimate question: was it worth it? Everyone who enters the world of professional wrestling is typically searching for something they feel is missing in their own personal lives. For Mick Foley, constant childhood teasing created an overwhelming, burning need to be liked by others, combined with fierce ambition to capture the World Wrestling Federation Championship belt. During his college years as a sophomore, a young Mick once took a swig of red food coloring and performed a death-defying leap off a dormitory bed onto a stuffed animal resting on a hard concrete floor. Upon impact, he spat out the artificial blood concoction while his fellow students watched in horror. When he heard a girl in the hallway scream that it was the most disgusting thing she had ever seen, he felt an intoxicating rush of power. He realized then that if he could not always make people love him, perhaps he could shock and disgust them to secure a reaction. That man became known across the globe as a hardcore legend, a survivor of Hell in a Cell. For many fans, Hell in a Cell serves as the ultimate gateway into the sport. Countless enthusiasts recount that this particular bout was the very first match they ever witnessed, sparking a lifelong devotion to professional wrestling. Yet, seasoned observers always follow up with a crucial question. Did you realistically expect every single match to be executed at that level of danger? Because they certainly are not. A standard Mick Foley match was already notoriously hardcore, brutal, featuring heavy blood loss, thumbtacks, barbed wire, fiery explosions, and unforgiving impacts directly onto bare concrete. He put his body through an unimaginable amount of punishment because realism was his greatest tool. In his early days, he did not believe he was performing a successful match unless he had trouble physically making it back to his hotel room afterward. He did not necessarily enjoy the agonizing pain itself. Rather, he relished the fact that he could absorb it, endure it, and sell the drama in a way that captivated the audience. His wife, Colette Foley, who met Mick more than 35 years prior, recalls noticing his gentle, kind eyes from the very beginning, though his corny jokes and terrible humor ultimately won her heart. Their wedding song was fittingly Beauty and the Beast. They formed a remarkably strong team. She deeply understood his profound commitment to his craft. When that adrenaline was pumping through his veins, he wanted people to leave the arena talking endlessly about how incredible the show was, regardless of the personal cost to his own well-being. That was his relentless internal drive, pushing him to become increasingly daring along the way. Before finding his footing in the World Wrestling Federation, he developed a wild, unpredictable alter ego known as Cactus Jack. Jim Cornette, who worked as an agent and producer for the World Wrestling Federation at the time of the Hell in a Cell match, noted that Mick possessed an extraordinary grasp of match psychology. He intuitively understood that fans gravitate toward performers who appear completely out of control, individuals who actively subvert the script. Cactus Jack could take those fans on a wild emotional ride, eliciting precisely the response he desired, ensuring that all attention focused squarely on him and growing his legendary reputation in the process. In the early stages of his career, Mick lived out of modest quarters, sharing a bedroom furnished with little more than a mattress on the floor, a small black and white television, and a barely functioning videocassette recorder loaded with Japanese professional wrestling tapes. He would sometimes consume up to 12 hours of footage from Japan in a single day, admiring the gritty realism and intricate storytelling where competitors battled not only each other, but the very environment around them. Believing that Japan was where he would ultimately carve out his living, he traveled overseas, seeking an environment that appreciated high-impact action. There, he formed a pivotal mentorship with Terry Funk, widely regarded as one of the greatest of all time for his peerless ability to make audiences suspend their disbelief instantly. Together, Terry Funk and Mick Foley engage in violent, fiery, and bloody death matches across Japan, treating those dangerous spectacles as proof that they were executing something truly extraordinary. At the time, the World Wrestling Federation was operating firmly within a sanitized, family-friendly era that critics often described as bland. A performer of Mick Foley's style did not naturally align with the corporate product the company was attempting to market. However, Al Snow, a former World Wrestling Federation superstar who served as Mick's dedicated travel partner and arguably his closest confidant. Recognized his unique value, Vince McMahon initially resisted bringing Mick into the company, doubting his marketability and conventional attractiveness. Jim Ross, who served as the vice president of talent relations during Hell in a Cell era, needed reliable opponents to challenge The Undertaker, one of the most monumental stars in the history of the industry. Frustrated by recurring creative directions that pitted The Undertaker against traditional giants, formula management fear was growing dull, Ross and other executives argued that the dead man desperately needed a volatile lunatic to elevate his programs. Reluctantly, Vince McMahon agreed to bring him in, reportedly slamming his hand on a table and declaring that they would obscure his face so audiences would not immediately recognize him, effectively treating his arrival as building a character out of nothing. Thus, Mankind was born. Gerald Briscoe, a World Wrestling Federation Hall of Famer, noted that such bizarre and unconventional concepts would fail completely with almost anyone else on the roster. But Mick Foley's commitment brought the grotesque, hair-pulling persona to vivid life, forging an undeniable connection with the viewing public. As The Undertaker and Mankind laid a strong foundational feud across numerous television broadcasts and pay-per-view events around the globe, Mankind's character eventually reached a creative plateau. Knowing a change was necessary to elevate their shared legacy, World Wrestling Federation producers looked toward a recently developed conceptual match type for the 1998 King of the Ring pay-per-view, Hell in a Cell. Traditional cage matches of that era required a competitor to escape by climbing over the top or walking out through the door. Seeking innovation, management proposed sealing the structure completely with a roof, ensuring both men entered, but only one walked out. While the inaugural Hell in a Cell match between The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels months prior had set a monumental benchmark in company history, Mick Foley was determined to push the boundaries even further, consulting with his mentor Terry Funk in a moment that began half in jest. Mick asked what they could possibly do to outshine previous encounters. Terry Funk jokingly suggested starting the match on top of the steel roof and getting thrown off. When Terry stopped laughing, Mick looked him straight in the eye and calmly stated that he genuinely believed he could pull it off. He soon pitched the daring concept to The Undertaker and Vince McMahon, while management harbored reservations about the immense danger involved. Mick's unwavering resolve ultimately won key decision-makers over, though he privately viewed the stunt not as a grand career renaissance, but simply as a desperate attempt to keep his head above water while his current run lasted. On June the 28th, 1998, at the Pittsburgh Civic Arena, a packed house eagerly awaited the historic showdown. Jimmy Corderas, serving as a ring crew member and referee that evening, watched from the backstage monitors alongside Gerald Briscoe, operating near the production command center. As The Undertaker's iconic entrance music echoed through the arena, Mick Foley shocked the entire wrestling world by bypassing traditional entranceway entirely, instead climbing directly to the roof of the 15-foot steel structure before the opening bell even rang. Admitting later that he was secretly terrified of heights and had never actually stood atop the cell prior to that night, Mick wrestled with internal panic while attempting to figure out how to navigate the steep ascent without compromising his professional composure. The match officially commenced atop the cage, immediately generating an overwhelming aura of tension and fear among the live audience and broadcast team alike. Featuring Jim Ross and Jerry the King Lawler, the steel mesh roof was held together in sections by simple plastic zip ties, meant to bear minimal weight, not the combined mass of 600 pounds of professional athletes. As The Undertaker and Mankind moved across the surface, the metal mesh suddenly sagged by nearly a foot, snapping zip ties with audible popping sounds as the structure began to give way. Attempting to execute a suplex on top of the mesh, The Undertaker halted, recognizing the severe risk of both men crashing through prematurely. As they traded heavy strikes near the edge of the roof, hovering directly above the Spanish announce tables, Observers backstage held their collective breath. The margin for error was razor thin. Then, in a fraction of a second that felt simultaneously like slow motion and the blink of an eye, a 300-pound human being was hurled from 20 feet above, plunging headfirst toward the concrete floor. The resulting crash as Mick smashed through the Spanish announce table echoed with terrifying clarity across the arena. Backstage personnel exploded in immediate concern, watching the monitor with the collective horror of witnesses to a catastrophic car accident. Many feared the worst, convinced that the performer had sustained fatal injuries. Colette Foley, watching the broadcast at home with their young children, desperately tried to soothe her terrified kids by whispering that the action was entirely fake, while quietly experiencing sheer panic inside her own mind. Miraculously, through precise mid-air body adjustment, Mick managed to absorb the brunt of the impact by landing relatively flat across the desk, cushioning the catastrophic fall. As Spanish commentator Hugo Savinovic narrowly bailed out his chair to avoid being flattened, medical personnel and colleagues rushed to the scene. Terry Funk was among the first to reach him, frantically checking for consciousness as Dr. Francois Petit, the traveling physician for the World Wrestling Federation, hurried down to evaluate the fallen athlete. Dr. Francois, known backstage for his martial arts background and no-nonsense physical adjustments, found his patient severely compromised, having landed heavily on his back and aggravating a pre-existing dislocated shoulder. Emergency medical technicians arrived with a gurney, but due to the spatial constraints of the arena setup, the equipment could not be easily maneuvered to the ringside area. In an unprecedented move, stadium staff were forced to elevate the steel cell structure, with The Undertaker still standing atop it to clear a path, as medical professionals prepared to transport him away on a stretcher, signaling to the shell-shocked audience that the match was conclusively finished. Mick Foley dug deep into his reservoir of willpower, driven by an intense desire to maximize audience engagement and complete the narrative he had set in motion. He refused to stay down, struggling back to his feet, astonishing the entire arena and drawing gasps of disbelief from his peers backstage. Mick began climbing back up the side of the steel structure. Observers watching from behind the curtain questioned his sanity, openly calling him the craziest individual in the history of the professional wrestling business. Yet, the unyielding competitor was determined to see his vision through to the end. What followed next was a second, unplanned catastrophe that pushed human physical endurance to its absolute breaking point. During a planned sequence near the center of the cage roof, The Undertaker delivered a powerful chokeslam, rather than gradually giving way as rehearsed. The weakened steel mesh panel suddenly fractured entirely under the impact, sending Mick Foley plunging directly through the opening from the top of the cell down into the canvas ring below. As he fell, a heavy steel folding chair resting on the roof tumbled through right behind him, striking him directly across the face upon impact with the solid mat. The canvas of a wrestling ring offers very little give, functioning closer to a layer over concrete than a soft cushion. The secondary blow from the heavy metal chair knocked Mick completely unconscious for the first time in his professional career, leaving a period of 42 seconds completely blank in his memory. Backstage, viewers watched in sheer horror. Colette Foley watched in furious disbelief, feeling betrayed that another dangerous stunt had been executed without warning, while their children looked on in distress at a motionless father lying lifeless on national television. Dr. Francois, Terry Funk, and other wrestlers rushed into the cage, fearing they were witnessing a tragedy. Noticing that Mick was unresponsive and breathing heavily, The Undertaker looked down at Terry Funk with genuine concern, prompting Terry to instruct The Undertaker to strike him to draw immediate public focus away from the severely injured mankind and allow medical staff to tend to him. Remarkably, as the fog cleared slightly, Mick regained a semblance of consciousness. Spotting Terry Funk's boots near his face, he instinctively pushed himself back up to continue performance. Despite a massive wound underneath his lower lip, loosened teeth, a dislocated jaw, and severe internal bruising, his instinct for television showmanship remained hyper-focused. In a surreal display of resilience, he famously poked his tongue straight through the massive laceration under his lip to emphasize the visual horror for the cameras, while even managing a fleeting smile despite the trauma. The physical toll of the 17-minute encounter was staggering. 15 stitches beneath the lip, 2 lost teeth, a dislocated jaw, a bruised kidney that troubled him for 6 weeks, and an uncalculated number of concussions. Yet, as the match reached its conclusion with The Undertaker securing the victory, 16,000 fans inside the Pittsburgh Civic Arena rose to their feet in absolute awe. When medical staff brought out a stretcher, Mick firmly waved it off, walking away under his own power to a thunderous ovation that confirmed complete success of his daredevil philosophy. Backstage, Vince McMahon was among the first to greet him at the curtain, expressing deep gratitude for his sacrifice while firmly requesting that he never attempt anything of that magnitude again. As medical staff immediately began plucking sharp metal thumbtacks from his skin, vestiges of a subsequent spot in the match, Mick famously asked those around him if they had managed to execute the thumbtack spot successfully, completely unaware that he had just endured one of the most violent spectacles in sports entertainment history. While the physical aftermath required grueling weeks of recovery, the match fundamentally transformed public perception of Mick Foley, sparking a massive career renaissance. Within 7 months of the event, the performer whom management once considered unmarketable captured the World Wrestling Federation World Heavyweight Championship. However, the victory came with severe long-term consequences that members of his family watched with mounting anxiety, driven by an unrelenting internal standard that demanded he constantly outdo his previous performances. Mick soon entered another notoriously brutal encounter, the infamous I Quit match against The Rock at the 1999 Royal Rumble event. Despite warnings from colleagues regarding the severe risks associated with excessive head trauma and unprotected chair strikes, Mick insisted on pushing forward to deliver the emotional intensity the fans expected. During the climax of the bout, scripted parameters were exceeded as he absorbed 11 unprotected chair shots directly to the head while handcuffed, pushing human physical endurance into deeply alarming territory. Family members, including his young children, who watched in visible distress from the front rows, found the brutality deeply traumatic. Medical professionals increasingly warned that continuing such a punishing style would lead to permanent disability, noting that taking repeated blows to the head in a professional wrestling ring carries a physical impact comparable to enduring a motor vehicle collision at 25 miles per hour. Independent neurological evaluations eventually delivered an unambiguous verdict. Further participation in professional wrestling would invite catastrophic, irreversible neurological damage. The long-term fallout of repetitive head trauma and concussions introduced the harsh reality of chronic traumatic encephalopathy, casting a long shadow over his post-retirement life. Despite experiencing daily worries regarding his cognitive future, Mick Foley has chosen to confront the challenge proactively, utilizing spoken word tours as a form of mental gymnastics to keep his mind sharp while connecting with a loyal fan base that stood by him through every harrowing fall. Reflecting on his legendary career, Mick acknowledges the complex duality of his choices, the relentless desire for acceptance, the pursuit of emotional connection with total strangers, and the willingness to risk his physical well-being were directly responsible for both his greatest professional triumphs and his enduring physical discomfort. Though the Hell in a Cell match occasionally threatened to overshadow every other accomplishment of his decorated career, discussions with peers like The Undertaker, who reminded him that their shared creation would outlive them both, helped him ultimately embrace the legacy he built. Standing years later inside a World Wrestling Federation warehouse alongside his daughter Noelle, and touching the original steel structure that defined his career, Mick was moved to tears, acknowledging both the profound danger he survived and the magical, surreal artistry he brought to the canvas of professional wrestling. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome inside the arena, where the echoes of history still reverberate through the steel and concrete. I am your guide through the shadows and the light of professional wrestling, standing at the crossroads of glory and devastation. Tonight, we pull back the curtain on one of the most polarizing, dangerous, and unforgettable chapters in the annals of sports entertainment. We are looking back at the dark side of a legacy forged in blood, pain, and an unquenchable thirst for acceptance. On the 20th day of June in the year 1998, at the World Wrestling Federation King of the Ring pay-per-view event, two titans stepped into a structure that would redefine the limits of human endurance. The Undertaker versus Mankind inside Hell in a Cell. Hell in a Cell hits you like a mallet to the consciousness. It was a masterpiece of madness, born from two talents who loved to push the envelope until it tumbled entirely over the edge. Pro wrestling is theater. It is scripted. It is spectacle. But you simply cannot fake gravity. Nothing in this industry had frightened veterans quite like that structure, and that was before the match even truly escalated. What left fans around the globe utterly stunned was the unrelenting, brutal punishment endured by Mick Foley. Until you witness it with your own eyes, you simply could not believe that a human being could physically subject themselves to such trauma and survive. This match was entirely real. The pain was real. The raw, unfiltered drama was real. Behind the scenes, professionals were cursing, screaming, and calling him an absolute idiot. Why would anyone do this? The legacy of Hell in a Cell remains a complex paradox, standing as both an epic, culture-shifting success and a terrifying cautionary tale. Those who were there backstage later reflected that they dodged bullets that day. Not just one, but several fatal bullets. It remains staggering to think that officials would allow a performer to go completely unconscious and then simply continue the match. The collateral damage that ensued from those 15 minutes in the spotlight is a heavy debt that one pays for the rest of their life. When does it finally stop? When is enough truly enough? It was a dangerously crazy masterpiece, but everyone involved has had to ask the ultimate question. Was it genuinely worth it? To understand a man known as Mankind, Cactus Jack, and Dude Love, you have to understand the void he was trying to fill. Everyone who enters a squared circle is searching for something missing in their own lives. For Mick Foley, he was teased heavily during his youth, creating an overwhelming, desperate need to be liked by strangers, and a burning desire to capture that World Wrestling Federation Championship belt. He remembers being a sophomore in college, taking a swig of red food coloring, and performing a daring leap off a bed onto a stuffed atom resting on a concrete floor. When he hit the impact point, he spat out the artificial blood concoction while the entire dormitory watched in stunned silence. When he heard a girl yell out that it was the most disgusting thing she had ever witnessed, he felt a sudden, intoxicating surge of power. He realized that if he could not always make people love him, perhaps he could shock and disgust them into paying attention. He just needed reactions. His name is Mick Foley, known worldwide as a hardcore legend, and he survived Hell in a Cell. Many fans point to Hell in a Cell as their ultimate gateway into professional